Hello everyone, Burb here. It has been a while since I have done a card review. Honestly, this is probably one of my most important ones that I've ever done because there's just been so much discussion on Mr. CB Wet. Should you pull her? Is she a must pull? Do you need to pull for her? What limit break do you need? 1 LB? Should you even try for MLB? Does MLB even give you anything additional? There's been so many questions posed, and I feel like you need the knowledge of how this card compares to other cards in the meta, as well as how this card interacts with cards in your deck. The other part of this video is going to be an insight into a sort of intermediate pull planning topic that I follow because this card gives a little bit more than just the additional stat output, because this is a specialist card. This is a specialist card that happens to have good stat output, but at the end of the day, this is a specialist card. So there is some theory in this, there is some psychology in this, there is some math in this. So I think there's a good balance of everything that this channel sort of strives for. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's talk about what LB for Mr. CB because we love alliteration here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to compare Mr. CB to fine motion. I find this is one of the most useful analyses that I do because getting the new card, you compare it to the gold standard of stat sticks in the game, which is fine motion. Fine motion has the greatest stat output for a wit card currently, right? The thing is that these two cards, they sort of do the same thing in two different ways. So fine motion, she has more friendship bonus, she has more training effectiveness, she has some initial wit, and she has more race bonus, whereas Mr. CB's, most of the value comes from the additional speed bonus and wit bonus. That's really where most of the stats are coming from. In addition, CB gives you some skill point bonus, some hint levels and hint frequency, and some more specialty priority and bond. So pretty much everything, every stat is sort of different on these two cards. I will not really be going into too much on how hint level affects it, but know that there is value there, and I will be brushing on it, but that's a completely separate video. So, to simplify things down, because that was a lot, you can look at the per tap strength of the training. So, on a wit tap, if you tap the button, what is going to happen? There's an equation that happens every single time you press the training, which is you basically have base training plus stat bonus, in this case wit bonus. You multiply it by the growth rate of your UMA, which is not relevant for this analysis. You multiply that by the mood modifier, which is 1 plus the mood bonus, which will be 20%, because we are assuming great mood. And then you multiply that 20% by the mood effect modifier, which is 30% for both these cards. And then you multiply all that by the training effectiveness, then the friendship bonus, and then something called participant count bonus, which is that if there is anything on the training, it adds an additional 5% TEF that adds multiplicatively. So it has a little bit more than just an additional TEF. All right, I'll go through the math just once and then we can be done with this equation. But for Mr. CB, 6 plus 2, because 6 is your base training at level 1 wit, you add 2. This is a wit with friendship, so it's not the most, but it kind of bridges the gap between the two other situations we're going to be looking at. So 6 plus 2, so 6 plus the 2 wit bonus that Mr. CB has, you multiply that by a 0.26, which is 20% for the mood. You multiply 20%, and you get another 6% from the mood effect, plus 1, so 1.26. And then you multiply that by the 5% training effectiveness, by the 30% friendship bonus, and then by the additional 5% participation bonus, and you end up getting 14.45 wit per tap, but this game rounds down to 14 wit. Fine motion kind of goes the opposite direction. She only has 1 wit bonus, but she multiplies it by the same stuff all the way until the friendship bonus and the TEF, where it's 1.15 versus 1 and 1.375, which really boosts and covers that gap until you get 14.64 wit per tap. So fine motion on a level 1 friendship training has 1.3% more stat output than Mr. CB, which is not really that much more, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so the thing to take from this is that, hey, in specific situations at low training, these two are rather interchangeable. Now, if you remove the friendship bonus, normally the stat bonus cards usually pull ahead a little bit. That's what happened with Nice Nature. But Mr. CB, unfortunately, or I guess for balance reasons, she loses her wit bonus and the speed bonus due to the unique effect, because it's tied to 80 bond plus, which is the friendship training threshold. So Mr. CB instead only gets 9.72 wit, whereas Fine Motion gets 10.65 due to her increased training effectiveness, despite the loss of the friendship bonus. So Fine Mo actually, while training up the bond on wit training, she has a 9.5% more stat output than Mr. CB. Okay, so when you're training it up, Fine Motion will have the advantage, and then Mr. CB will be pretty much equal to Fine Motion, and then we talk about level 5. So level 5 is another good situation because that is what Summer is. In Trackblazer, Summer is the majority of your stats. In Grand Live, we will just be tapping buttons a lot, so we will get our training levels up higher progressively over time. So in a summer training, level 5 training, Mr. CB gets 21.61 wit, whereas Fine Motion gets a whopping 23.01 wit. So Fine Motion has 6.4% more stat output. The thing to take from this is saying, hey, when it's low, you see how they're pretty much interchangeable at 1.3. As the training level, as the level of the training tap gets higher, Fine Motion slowly pulls away until about 5 to 6% more stat output. Now, stats are not everything on these cards because you have speed as well as wit. Sorry, wit stat. CB, because of the speed bonus she has while friendship training, means she gets 9.02. Speed per wit tap as well as Fine Motion gets 8.36 on a summer training, right? The thing is that Fine Motion pulls back a little bit because the training effectiveness is just sort of that powerful. So CB is only a 7% more speed output despite having a whole speed bonus. Now the thing is, let's do this. So the sanity check. This is from uma.guide. They have a training calculator that is just the rounded down values. So a level 1 training friendship bonus is the numbers I said. Basically, Mr. CB wit is roughly the same in wit output with more speed because of the speed bonus as well as more skill points because of the skill point bonus. Whereas at level 5 training, Fine Motion is significantly more with 2 more wit bonus in exchange for the 1 skill point bonus as well as speed bonus. So depending on what you're looking for in trainings, if you need more speed based on the deck you're currently running, Mr. CB actually may be better for it because of the speed bonus and more skill point bonus as well. But Fine Motion is just still the queen of just wit card wit output, okay? Another thing to note is bonus on off trainings. Because of Fine Motion's TEF, you're going to find that Fine Motion also sort of boosts the every other training, except for Guts, where Mr. CB's speed bonus is really, really important on that. So pretty much on the other trainings, the gap is not very much because it's only 10% TEF, but it should be noted that Fine Motion will have an additional 0.5 stats added to the other trainings besides wit itself, okay? So it adds up. It's a very minor effect, but speed, stamina, and power training, Fine Motion has like a half stat margin, which may matter in summer trainings while you are boosting it with 60% and an anklet weight, right? The next thing to look at is let's compare it to the free-to-play cards currently available. This is where most people are at right now. One moment. I'm going to grab a drink of water. There's going to be a lot of drinks of water probably because we got a lot of stuff to go through. But should you even upgrade if you have just MLB SR, specifically Tachyon on Sunday right now? And the answer is Mr. CB does give a significant boost to stats. So if you look here, we saw the difference between Fine Motion and Mr. CB was only 2 wit. Against Tachyon on Sunday, there is additional 3 wit, but more importantly, you also get 2 speed as well as 2 skill points, especially on Marvelous Sunday. So Tachyon does have the skill point bonus for 6, but even Sunday, it's a 3 skill point advantage per wit tap. So you get 66% more speed output, you get about 15 to 27% more wit output. Fuku is only 15% because it's just a monster on wit training, but obviously it has 0% RB, so it's pretty unusable right now. CB just also gives just a lot more skill points as well over the course of the run, which we'll go into in a bit. But specialty priority, another thing to look at, Mr. CB, if you don't know specialty priority, the equation is just 100 plus priority over 550 plus priority, so it sort of slowly adds occurrence bonus over time. But Mr. CB will basically be on wit training a quarter of the time, where Fine Motion will be slightly less at 23.07. How to go and bring this into real life training situations or real game training situations is that, hey, look at the situations where you really, really need people to be on their training. So let's look at Summer and Trackblazer. let's say, hey, we have 8 summer trainings. What's going to happen? Mr. CB is going to be on average on her wit training with friendship, hopefully, 2 trainings out of the 8, whereas fine motion will only have 1.88 trainings, which means about 1 out of every 6 runs you will get an additional training on summer when it's really important for Mr. CB compared to fine motion. Something that's small, but you will find it noticeable if you're running, 10, 20, 30 runs. It just adds more consistency. Now, if you're taking, because of the prevalence of like Vita wit tapping, um, if you are doing like a race maxing build with like 35, 36 races, obviously this gets better the less races you do. Um, I've just done my standard schedule where I have 36 races, which means there's 39 trainings. Of those 39 trainings, you're going to find that Mr. CB is on wit on average of 9.75 trainings, or an expected value of 9.75 trainings, whereas fine motion is only 8.99 trainings. So CB roughly will get an additional friendship training per one on a useful terms. Maybe it's closer to zero point 0.6 or zero point 0.7, so 1 out of every 2 runs, somewhere in the realm of every other run to every run. Mr. CB will give you an additional friendship training. Okay, so that sort of pulls up CB a little bit, but it still doesn't exactly meet fine motion um, in that regard. So the SP output, the thing to note with this is that right now in TrackBlazer, it's about even, if not skewed towards fine motion, because Mr. CB gets 1 skill point per training, whereas fine motion has an additional 5% race bonus, which will give you between 1 and 2 skill points per race. But right now we are racing a lot more than we are training, and Mr. CB is not going to be on every training, so I would say that fine motion gets about a 20 skill point advantage from that as well. And then also, this will be the brush on the hint bonus. So she has hint bonus too, Mr. CB. So if you get a useful skill and you care about the skill that she is hinting, she basically gives you 30 skill points right there on the discount. Because let's say you proc straightaway spurt on the hint, that means that you have gotten 3 hint levels, whereas if you proc Nimble Navigator on Fine Motion, you only get 1 hint level. So that is 30 skill points in that way. So the skill points, in my opinion, are pretty moot. They're pretty close on this regard in particular. In Grand Lab, I think it skews a little bit more towards Mr. CB because we are training a lot more. The other thing to note is 5% race bonus does not just do skill points, and it's quite important in TrackBlazer. For every race, you're basically getting about a half stat with the 5% race bonus with fine motion. So you will get between another 20 and 15 to 20 stats, just random stats from the fine motion race bonus. This can be easily compensated with certain deck choices. Okay. The conclusion that I would like to make is that Mr. CB, depending on what you're looking for, it's roughly 90% of stat bonus. It has advantages in other aspects, but as far as pure wit comes, CB is roughly in about 85 to 90% threshold. If you take the speed into account, I think it's more closer to the 90%. So as far as a stat stick is concerned, Mr. CB gets you 90% of the way there. Which means if you're a newer player and you just need a card to pull on, it's a very good card to pull on. Now, here's the more intermediate stuff. At some point, we need to stop thinking about cards as just plain stat sticks because, hey, we have Kittison, we may have Fine Motion, we have our Super Creek for our longs, we have cards that can generate our stats, and now we need to get to the next level, which is, of course, skills. Okay, are you going to use the skills on these cards? This is a specialist card that just happens to have quite good skill output that is slightly worse than the best stat stick in the game, right? Mr. CB has a lot of good standard skills, but her main thing is that she's an end closer focused card, which has not happened yet in this game. So if you can see here, her hints, we do get like Rainy Days, which is niche, right? Home stretch haste is okay, medium corners is okay, tailhead high. You get some mid race, right? But really you're getting this for the fact that you have a hint on straightaway spurt and you have daring strike. We'll talk about daring strike in a second. Fine motion, on the other hand, gives a bunch of generalist skills. Obviously, if it's right-handed or fall, it's a much better card for this, but really you're looking at nimble navigator and corner adept. Also OPP best skill in the game, but that's kind of a meme and I'm trying to be serious. Okay, so daring strike versus speed star. Speed star is not the greatest skill in the world in my opinion. It only works on about half the tracks. but it's quite a good pace chaser skill, and it's a nice bonus to have on the best stat stick card in the game currently. Daring Strike, on the other hand, um, it just unlocks end closers. So Daring Strike is exactly what most end closers are looking to do, in which they are abusing their late race speed, which means they need to really fight for the mid race to cancel. After PDM ends, you're fighting for the mid race as hard as possible. And Daring Strike is an absolutely ridiculous skill that has more value than almost every other mid race skill in the game. Um, and now it's on a wit card. Before it was on Admire Vega power only, which means you couldn't do it in Guts Maxing, you couldn't do it on Admire Vega. You also had to run a power card, which is tough on a lot of situations. But now it's on a wit card, which are one of the two types of cards that most people are most familiar with speed wit decks. Um, and Daring Strike is insane. This is gonna, like, before Marzensky comes out, end closers have a massive boost, and then the front runners will sort of get that boost back when Marzensky comes out. But you will be using Daring Strike on an end closer for a long time, let's say, and we'll talk about the longevity in a bit. So, in my personal opinion, you should drop treating your pull plans and your card planning as just a way to collect stat sticks for multiple reasons that we'll get into. Um, this seems to be the popular opinion with Mr. CB because people are saying, oh, it's, if you have fine motion, you're good. If you have nice nature wit, you're good for the stat stick portion. But like even that, right now it's the most popular opinion, but when I'm going to do this in the same thing on the next card, it's not going to be the popular opinion. So I've done this before, and I've said this, but you really need to pick cards that represent your favorite style. So eventually, there will be a better stat stick than the one you're doing. I'm just going to check audio still running because this is vacation time. Sorry, it is. All right. So I've done this before. Eventually, the card that you're running, this fine motion that everyone loves, and it's a good card, is going to be usurped by something. Some may say it's Romanu. Um, Technically, it's better stat stick than Romanu, but um, eventually, Almond Eyewit's going to come out. Your speed card, your Kidison Black is eventually going to be beaten in pure stats by El Condor Pasa Speed. And then we're going to go on in the future more and more and more, and these cards are going to become faster and faster and faster and faster. All of a sudden, cards are going to be power crept in the stack thresholds like every month. And we can't get on this train of just picking the best stat sticks all the time, not only because it's going to kill our bank accounts, but also because it's just not as useful if we're picking certain characters to run. All right, so there's cards that are in a tier of their own, like Measure Romanu, like Kidison Black, like El Condor Pasa Speed, like Almond Eye Speed, Wit, whatever Almond Eye is. They're great stat sticks. They are near must pulls. One, because they are very close, if not the best stat sticks in the game, but more importantly, they have ridiculous generalist skills in their kit. So the reason why Kidison Black is so good is it's the best speed card in the game in terms of stat output, but also because it has Pro Curve. Why are we using Kidison Black in Track Blazer when it only has 5% race bonuses? Because this skill is that busted. Pro Curve is such a good general skill on every single character in the game. That is why El Condor Pasta Speed is very good, is because if you're a late surge, you can run check and you can run both of these. But most people, they're going to get it for the Professor of Curvature and the fact that it has the best stat output in the game, right? Almanac is going to be ridiculous when Brilliant Mind comes out, but even when it's not medium, you have Beeline Burst and Pro Curve. Pro Curve is just popping up over and over again. And at first glance, you can see this is a mild medium track only skill on Measure Romanu, but the thing is, half the CMs are mediums and like a quarter of the CMs are miles. So most of the champions meetings or League of Heroes and things that you're doing are going to be on these different tracks of these distances. So yes, there will be niche usage on sprints and longs where you won't necessarily want to run Romanu exactly because of her skill. But even then, she's still a decent stat stick. She's like 90% of the way there. The next level of like pull planning is like specialist cards now for your specific roles. So like Mr. CB, you're buying this for Daring Strike. Summer Maru is a very good stat stick for top runner. Like she has a near mandatory skill for front runners and top runner. Fine Motion's really good. She has Speed Star as kind of an addition. So eventually we're gonna speed star will be nice, but there'll be better cards that have better skills. And Jungle Pocket I know is it's multiple roles, but late surges don't have a specialist card. Come on. But stat sticks, if you just consider Summer Maru as a stat stick, it's going to be beaten very quickly in the meta. Like it's going to be 4 to 5 months. Where Summer Maru, if you're not playing frontrunners and you hate frontrunners, why would you pull for the frontrunner card when Elconder Process Speed is just going to be the better stat stick, right? You can pick a card that's going to have more use in your role than just the card that you're buying just for the stat stick. If you care about the skill on a card, it lasts a lot longer. So if you are playing end closers consistently and you care about Daring Strike, the Daring Strike skill is not power crept out of the game really until like Narita Taishin Wit is the example that I found. I'm sure there's other thoughts on it, but Soaring Stride is just kind of better Daring Strike, and you of course get the chance of getting Shadow, so you can even kind of run both of these if you can decide to run 2 wit cards. I know I'm yapping a lot, but like this is sort of the psychology part of like a lot of cards have more use than just the stats themselves. And if you take this to its fruition of saying, hey, I need to start picking cards for the roles that I enjoy playing and understand the meta of those roles, like if you're playing frontrunners, they're really good now, and then they're really League of Heroes stuff later, and if you're playing late surges, they're really tough now, but then they become really niche useful in other situations. Sorry, just checking audio. But most cards are within 80 to 90% of the best stat stick in the game. And that is important, but if you take it to its fruition, if you haven't pulled for fine motion now, you may consider other cards because they have skills that are good in their specific situations. This is, medium only, but if you need to pull on a wit card, you might find one of the ones that people aren't really talking about that meets your fancy because it still gets you most of the way there. If you take this to the extreme, which is Oshi gaming, I am playing my favorite character. Let's take Kidison Black for an example. Each character has a strength and a weakness, and you look at the weaknesses of your characters and you say, does this card solve that problem? A lot of times it's going to be no, because why would a Pace Chaser card solve the problem for my frontrunner? Why would an End Closer card solve my problem for a late surger, right? If you take Kidison Black, what is her problems? She is a frontrunner and she needs mid-race. So let's pull on Summer Maru. That's the non-controversial part, right? If you are a true Oshi gamer and you need something until El Condor Process Speed, I'm not saying you should pull for this card, but you should consider Tokai Teo Wit, maybe even as a borrow, because this solves your other problem that you can't run Kidison Black, because hey, you get Pro Curve now, and now you're on par with the other frontrunners in the lobby. If you're able to get Pro Curve, Top Runner, Escape Artist, I bet you are doing a pretty good time with Flash Forward on longs especially too. So that is my little, I guess, PSA for future pull planning. It sort of was a shoo-in in this one, but I found it was probably the most important part of the video. Whenever you're Oshi gaming, you're going to find that certain cards you just continue using over and over again. If you're a Taishin main, obviously you can't run the Taishin card, so like you're gonna have additional value because you're probably gonna just run Mr. CB for Daring Strike because you're not gonna be running it on Taishin because you can't run it on Taishin, right? So, should you pull from Mr. CB? Use your own critical thinking. I'll go over this later. At the very least, I think you should think about 1, do you have 30k carats? That's the requirement. 2, do you need more SR gold support cards? If you're a new player, it's perfectly fine. If you don't know exactly what you want to do in this game yet, just go first 30k carats that you have, pull on a banner that looks at all useful. This banner is actually quite a bit more useful than other banners to single spark because we'll talk about 1LB versus MLB, but you actually get some use out of it. Secondly, are you going to run end closers? That's the big one. Are you going to run end closers? If you're not running end closers, you don't care about the skill, and this card will lose its viability pretty quickly compared to possibly other cards that you're running. If you only care about the stats, you get about 6 months out of this card. You get Romanu, and then you're not going to use this card because you're not going to run end closers. So if you're not going to run end closers, it has about 6 months shelf life, which is good. But I mean, if you have fine motion already, you probably don't need it at this point, right? For end closer players, like I said, the skill lasts for about 14 months, and even then, you can still consider running it. It just becomes the second best, right? And yeah, and for Oshis, it's even longer. All right, I think I've talked about the point enough. Part 2, 1LB, MLB. what LB do you need this card? Is it useful at different limit breaks? I'm gonna grab a drink of water. I'm getting a little tired, sorry. So, all right. I can't even mute it, sorry. Um, so 0LB, 1LB, MLB. What you're looking at here is the comparison between the three. The big thing is that 1LB, she does get the whip bonus, and that is why a lot of people are saying she is usable at 1LB. And she is. I will tell you, she is usable at 0LB if you have to. Like, the whip bonus is very nice, and I will go through that, but she is a pure stat stick card. We're running 0LB Bijan if we have to. It just kind of is sad. And the reason why it's sad is that one wit bonus is very effective. It's about 16% more wit on a level 1 training and about 9% more wit on a level on a level 5 training. So wit bonus is super, super important, and basically that 1LB is just such great value for an additional copy of the card. So 0B to 1LB, quite important to get, not absolutely 100% required. The other thing that you have to consider is that 0LBCB, while it's usable for the gold skill, you're basically running an MLB you're basically running an MLB SR card at that point. She gives, a little bit more speed for the same amount of wit and a little bit more skill points, but you're basically running Tachyon MLB and you're trading off 5% race bonus for the skill Daring Strike. So that is why 1LB is usually the threshold that most people say. I find it is a good threshold, and it's probably worth using your selector on at that point. I don't know if it's even crystallable, but I'm very, very conservative when it comes to crystals personally. So definitely selector 0LB to 1LB is useful. You can consider the crystal if you are a end closer player just starting out. Like, if you're an end closer player just starting out and you like end closers, definitely crystal to 1LB if you end up only getting one copy of it. Okay. 1LB versus MLB 3LB. This is where I find it's the most interesting. It doesn't look like it gives a lot. So if you look here, 1LB to 2LB, you get a 1% friendship bonus. So you get 1 energy regen because of the wit regen. You get an initial threshold. So I call it initial threshold because the initial friendship gauge, if you look here, 16, 18 to 20. At 18, it's basically if you subtract 7 from 80, you cross over that threshold of 17 at that point. So at this point, you actually have one less training you need to do in order to go and get the friendship training. So this adds a lot of ease of use that is hidden at 2LB, and then of course 0.7% occurrence bonus. At 2LB to 3LB, you get an additional friendship bonus, and then her additional stat is mood effect. And mood effect is good, it's just not the most important thing on a card, and you do get more specialty priority for another 0.6% occurrence bonus. So you're going to see her on wit a little bit more. It's 23% versus 25%, so this is sort of fine motion level versus the new CB level. And then at 3LB to MLB, you get an additional energy regen, 15 mef, and 2% more friendship bonus, which doesn't look like a lot. It is a linearly scaling card, but it is a linearly scaling card, okay? If you look at the actual wit trainings, it's not readily apparent what it's doing. So if you see here, the only thing that happens is at MLB, you get a bonus wit, and you get an additional skill point at the end, which is, that's important, but really these are being thresholded. So even though it looks like only MLB gives a little bit more, if you look at actual training types, so if you look at a summer training, a double training, and you can even see where you're boosting it in TrackBlazer, this is where it becomes readily apparent of sort of how the scaling is working. At 0LB, you're getting 32 with a bonus of 19, of course, so 32 base wit on a summer training, whereas if you just get the actual if you get the actual wit training bonus, you're getting a +2, which is significant, believe me. If you look here, you're getting 3 wit from every tap. You do that in summer like 8 times. That's another 25 wit from just one card, 1LB increase. That is a large advantage. You see that? You can do that. You have 6 card slots in your slots. It's the difference between 0 and 1LB is giving you an additional like 8% stats, right? You do that every time, you've doubled your stats, right? That's why you want to run good cards. The thing is that from 1LB to MLB, you also get another 3 wits. So this is a perfectly linearly scaling card, which is different than many other cards we've had so far, where 3LB is an important breakpoint. The thing is, the effectiveness of 0 to 1LB is also equal to the effectiveness of 1LB to 3LB. So you're getting less after the 1LB, but it's still useful to do so. So This is the shoe-in card for end closers for the foreseeable future. You only have 6 slots in your deck. You want to make those cards as best as possible. If you are consistently running end closers, you have the carrots, and you have a pull plan set out that you can go and pull for 60,000 carrots on this card, it is not a bad idea to try to max limit break this card. And the thing is with this card is if you only end up getting 3 LB, it's not the end of the world. You've just sort of gotten 36 instead of 37, right? So because of this, if you are truly an end closer main that you know you love end closers and you want to play them because you're going to be running this card in your deck so much, you are getting a good amount of stats and skills on a card you're always running. Okay? Does that make sense? This is not crystal worthy. There's no real point to crystal this after 1 LB because you are getting marginal return gains for something that can be used later for, El Condor process speed, which has a legitimate threshold at 3 LB, right? So there is a selector. You could go and selector this if you wish. I think it's a pretty good selector, to be perfectly honest. Yes, that's pretty much it. So as you go along, you will get more value as you continue. All right. So MLB is perfectly fine to go for. It does not fall off a cliff. So should you pull for Mr. CB, I've gone through a lot of information. I know it's been sort of rambly here and there. Try to think about it for just a second first. On your situation, how often are you going to run end closers? That's really what we need to think about. I will go and give some suggestions here. 1, 30k carries required. 2, how often are you going to play an end closer? Okay? If you are going to play an end closer occasionally and maybe 1 LB, if you are a true end closer main, or you are at a position in your account where you are starting to be in the position where you need to branch out different styles and stuff because you have Max Kitasan, you have Max Super Creek, you have Max Finemo even, or you have an NTR or a Fuku. You're at the stage where you have your stat stick set already. You need to start considering investing into the cards for the roles that you enjoy and going all in on those roles and all in on the characters that you enjoy. If you're a newer player, do you need SR cards? Do you have the Shinko Windies? Do you have the Tachyons, the Marvelous Sunday Wits, the cards that are going to be good in Track Blazer now, the cards that are going to be at least usable in the later on to get you at the point where you can start thinking about the second tier of this, where you need to start thinking about which SSR cards that I need to truly invest in. There is that point where you will flip the switch, and this is the first stage is, hey, I need to get my SR cards set. You can pull as a new player on any of the good cards. This is also why I wanted to go and highlight some of the other wit cards that are out. You obviously, you can wait till Romanu, but that's 8 months away. But if you're a newer player, are you really going to survive 8 months with non-MLB cards? I think I say it here. Okay, never mind. We'll talk about it later, but there's cards that are wit that are very good. There's cards that are not wit that are very good. And, some of these you see in the meta, some of these you don't really see in the meta, but they all have their particular uses. So, is this your first SSR? So I talked about the tier where you need to fill out your SR cards. The next state is, hey, you need to start investing in good SSR cards. This could be a very good SSR card, and it doesn't have high investment because 1 LB is really the start of the linear curve of this card. So if this is your first SSR card, even if you are playing end closers occasionally, you still need to play end closers occasionally. It can boost your account above that of the SR level. You need to feel progress over time, especially when starting this game out. Light Hello and Tachyon is a near must pull banner because of how much it gives you in Grand Live in terms of happiness, right? If you don't want to struggle through an entire scenario by not pulling the scenario card. You will have a time to do 30k by Light Hello Tachyon. Assuming there's no Oshis that you want to pull for, you could pull for this card a Spark, and you could go and get a passable amount on the next banner. If you really play this game a little bit more and you get good at it, you might have 60k for it, and then you're sort of opening it up over time. You have to ask yourself, are you able to wait 3 months running just 1 LB, 2 LB SRs without, or just running without an SSR card that gives you an advantage in a certain style? There's a lot of things to think about, I know. Is there anything else here? No. Yes. 1 LB versus MLB. Things to consider. The longevity of this card is not to be discounted for end closer players. The end closer players will be running Daring Strike for the foreseeable future. I calculated 14 months of accelerated schedule because it's like 2 years. There may be a card that I missed, um, but this is not Cristobal really. I don't think. But is certainly you can use a selector on it. I think it's a good idea if you're an end closer main. The selector target, I would say, personally, is behind all the big three. 3LB, of course. Kidison MLB in particular, I think is rather powerful, especially in Grand Live. And then 1LB Maru, if you are running 0LB Maru, you might want to just get that to 1LB first because it gives you 2 usable cards instead of one. So MLB does have value specifically for end closer mains. It's perfectly fine to do. There is one more consideration that there is a double banner coming out in the future. So in about 4 months, there is a banner with another very good card in Super Creek. The card that is basically the #1 stamina card until Air Shakur Stamina, I believe, which is in like a year and a half. And then after that, it's the #2 stamina card. Um, from there, you could consider a couple of things. One, I don't personally like waiting for that banner if you enjoy playing end closers now, because you are losing like 4 months of accelerated schedule for just a slightly better return on investment. Now, I'll go into that in a different video. But what I would do personally is if you have the carrots now and your pull plan can support pulling 30,000 carrots right now, do one spark on here and see what you get with CB. You could get super unlucky and get 0LB. I understand you probably selector it at that point. But in every other situation, you're going to be able to do a usable 1LB and then go on the double banner and go and bump that up to at least 3LB, if not MLB, while you are going and trying to pull probably a double spark on Super Creek to get her to MLB if you are brand new, or a single spark. So if you get lucky on CB, you might only do a single spark on Super Creek, because that would mean that you are kind of targeting CB MLB. If you get unlucky, maybe you do a double spark on that rerun banner. You could also consider, if you get really lucky with Mr. CB3LB and you have like a 2LB Super Creek, maybe you go and you daily pull, right? You daily pull, daily pull, daily pull, and then you use your selector on Super Creek after that banner as well. So there's a lot of things to consider with these double banners. I think that's the way you should use it as well, is, hey, if you have the carrots and you enjoy end closers, this is the time to pull for the banner. And then from there on, you can support that style later. It's the same thing that I probably should have done on late surges with Nice Nature. I should have done a spark on Nice Nature. The problem is that that card was not really as usable as this card is at 1LB. So CB is a fun card. This is the conclusion. Yep. So CB is a fun card. Again, this is a style-based card, and we're going to start seeing more style-based cards, and you have to consider what your account is trying to do. If you enjoy end closers, pull for CB is my personal pull plan, but again, I've given you a ton of knowledge, probably too much knowledge to really think about it, and take all that knowledge and make your own determination. You have 8 hours, you could sleep on it even if you want to. Am I pulling for Mr. CB? I am, because I am a late surger player personally, because the characters I enjoy are late surger, but also a lot of them can stretch into end closer, and I also play an end closer from time to time. This helps me run B&W. This helps me with other things. Honestly, I find value in it enough to do at least a spark, if not two. Am I pulling to MLB? I think I'm doing a double spark. We will see how the first one goes. But that's just because I don't really have anything in the future until Light Hello Tachyon and Steampunk Takezo. So that is what I am doing. I hope that this has been useful. I know this has been a lot. The goal of this video was, again, to give you information, and I hope that I have done so. So maybe this helped. I don't really know how to close out this video. So good luck if you are pulling on Mr. CB, and if you're not, there is Summer Mario in the future. There is Agnes Tachyon Speed and Light Hello in the future. Those two are the other two target cards, I think, in the future, in the next 3 months or so. All right, take care, everyone. Burb out.